Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello, welcome to week 4, lecture 4. Now, we are almost coming to the end of our course. So, this lecture will talk about an auditing system at city level. We have gone through the building level audits, we have talked about harmonized guidelines, we have talked about Able India framework, and also you have been exposed to the various norms and standards not only at the building level, but also at the city level. We have talked about inclusive design in the for railways, for road transport, for pedestrian areas, for tourism. This we have already discussed. Now, we also would require, if you want to do something for the cities, some kind of an audit or some kind of an assessment for the cities also. So, this lecture will talk about a framework, inclusive city framework, which actually attempts that. Now, why do we need an inclusive city? Here these things are all there, like for sense of security, psychological comfort, economic independence, quality of life, feeling of self-worth, social acceptance, safety. These are the vision, but the actual requirement, or why do we need an inclusive city, is that for seamless accessibility. You might have accessible buildings, you might have an accessible school, an accessible office building, an accessible hospital, or you might also have your home made accessible. But if you do not have an accessible transportation system, if you do not have an accessible park, if you do not have accessible footpaths, that means your journey becomes incomplete. The travel chain breaks. So, that is the idea of inclusive city, where you consider all aspects of urban life, because a city provides a myriad of opportunities in terms of health, education, recreation, employment and everything. So, every aspect, and also exercising the citizens' right. We have seen good practices on accessible polling booths, accessible police stations. So, inclusive city talks about a holistic audit framework which can identify the barriers in different aspects of urban or in different sectors, and can give and do a holistic rating of a city in terms of accessibility, or even a zone of the city, not only not a city as a whole has to be, it can be a zone of the city only, or a particular area of the city. Maybe you are going for the rating the CBD, central business district of the city, that is also possible. Now, background is that this is a collaborative effort under the Building Accessible, Safe and Inclusive Indian Cities. We have discussed this basic initiative when we were talking about the various the timeline of in Indian context, and IIT Kharagpur, Department of Architecture, we had collaborated with National Institute of Urban Affairs, and we had come up with this inclusive city framework. So, this is the framework which was first launched in 2021, and after that we had revised that in 2023. So, we did a pilot in 4 cities of the country, and including a one hilly city. So, and we came up with certain modifications. I will tell you that later, that what modification we did as a result of the pilot study, and currently what is available is Inclusive City Framework 2023, that is available in the internet. So, which can be downloaded, and of course, I will be providing you when the contents will be released, I will provide you with the latest version also. So, the application of this inclusive city framework, this inclusive city planning principles can be integrated into urban retrofitting or redevelopment projects, the sectoral plans and projects. What I mean by, I will explain. Urban retrofitting or redevelopment project, say the core area of the city, the inner core of the city or the central business district of the city requires some kind of retrofitting, redevelopment to improve accessibility. This can be used to identify the barriers. Or the sectoral plans and projects. What I mean by sectoral plan is, say transportation is a sector. If the city authority decides to do a mobility improvement plan, that can be utilized, that this can be done. Or say digital accessibility to city services is a sector. So, if the city authority, the municipality desires to make their website accessible, this can be utilized. So, this is possible for urban retrofitting, that is the smart city has two domain, ABD, that is area based development, or pan city development. So, it is applicable for both the verticals of smart city, that is for area based development where you go for this urban retrofitting, or a pan city development where you are maybe preparing the entire master plan or the development plan for the city. And also for the greenfield city, or the when you maybe a new city or satellite town is being developed somewhere, or there is a huge area in the or there is a huge plot of land in the peri-urban areas where the new massive development is going to take place. So, new projects are coming up. So, they are also this is applicable. So, that is the applicability of this inclusive city framework. It has got 6 sectors, 23 components, and again as we discussed, if you recall the Able India parameter that we talked about, the measurable parameters. So, here we are talking about calling these indicators, that there are 196 measurable indicators. So, what are the sectors? The first one, the housing, physical and social infrastructure. I will in the next slides I will be trying to cite some examples. Housing, physical and social infrastructure. Then you have this outdoor environment, then you have the urban mobility and public transportation, IT connectivity, digitization, governance, public participation, livelihood and recreation and tourism. So, this has been copyrighted by the Copyright Office, Government of India. So, how does it work? I mean, first of all, the appraisal of need. You can conduct strategic accessibility audits for each of these sectors that we talked about. So, the first I talked about that if you desire sectoral improvement, you want to make the employment accessible in your country, in your city, fair enough. So, that means you can go for very targeted need appraisal, okay. Or you do there can be two things, and you target a sector, transportation sector, you just follow those checklists and then come up with a strategic plan. Or you do a holistic assessment and find out which are the sectors which are doing well and which are the sectors which are maybe falling behind, and you can work on those. Then you have this assessment, benchmarking and gap identification. So, there what you can do, you can do some kind of a since it is a rating based system, you can do a benchmarking, that well, this is the desired standard and this is where my city lies now, I want to reach this standard. And the preparation of access plan, as we have done seen for Able India framework also, you can strategize and you can take informed decision. Also, there is a scope for phasing, because we will discuss that in the later slides, which explains how this can help you in phasing. So, this is a 5-step approach towards an inclusive city. Now, here first one is to conduct safety, accessibility and inclusivity audit. So, that is the most tedious part. With the help of this 196 indicators, you will do a audit, and also it is advised that you do a CPS, or the citizen perception survey, to correlate that what you are seeing, what you are auditing is what is being validated by the actual users. So, just to correlate. Then finally, you do the inclusivity scores, or there is a star rating system which has been provided here, do that. And then finally, then come up with the user centering guidelines, which we have, or these guidelines we studied, that for every sector we have covered many guidelines. Also, this has a provision for ensuring stakeholders and the beneficiaries, and with the help of this you can crystallize a future pathway in terms of planning, implementation and review. So, a review framework has also been suggested in this towards the end of the framework, because this is a continuous process. Okay. Now, say this is accessible housing. Let us say what are the indicators. So, let us see the first indicator. Accessible mass housing is connected to the accessible mass transit, and look at, okay. Now, say you have a housing which is a building, I mean housing complex which is accessible or which has got accessible units. Now, since we are talking at a city level and when we are talking about seamless accessibility, it is important that we also have this accessible housing located in a place where it is connected to accessible transportation system. You have got a hospital, you have got maybe a vocational training center for person with disability. Is it near I mean that is not housing, but it is a service, it is a social infrastructure. So, is it located near the accessible transportation? Is it connected? So, that is a parameter here, that is an indicator here. Say, let us go to the third indicator. Minimum 15% of the units in any mass housing projects, public or private, are of adequate size to include universal design facilities. We talk about optimization. If a housing unit is coming up with 100 units, it is not necessarily that all 100 units are to be made accessible. So, requirement is 15% of the units. Next, the accessible water supply. 100% of the formal residential units need to have individual water connection, but what about the informal units? Second parameter, second indicator is informal units, say because a considerable percent of our urban population live in slums. So, what about their accessibility? They are relying on public water sources. So, whether the public source of water is within the within 30 meter from their house maximum, and whether it is approached by well lit accessible pathways. So, this is one example of accessible water supply. Whether all organizations in charge of public places they have their water supply as per the harmonized guideline. Then you have maybe accessible health. So, accessible health, so all the healthcare facilities need to be accessible and they are to be linked to accessible affordable public transport. Also, whether these PHCCs or public healthcare centers are properly dispersed in the city, in the residential zones. So, you do not need to travel 20 kilometers to access a public healthcare center, because here we are talking about the city planning level things. We also can include, I am not, I mean it is there, I am not included in the slide, but in the parameters are there, where accessible, accessible telehealth service. Accessible education, public transport thing is there. Let us see maybe whether they are provision for special schools and night school, whether they are vocational training centers for person with disability, whether there are these incentives or subsidies that provide for special students to procure internet package, laptops and smartphones, so that they can go for online education. Next, we have this safety and convenience of pedestrian and slow moving vehicles. Whether the accessible footpaths on all cities roads are available as per IRC standards. Whether the pedestrian crossings are available at appropriate places, whether there are available cycle tracks on busy roads. So, these are just I am giving some examples, I mean it is a whole list of 196 indicators. So, please you can download it and have a look. Then you have these employment opportunities for the vulnerable groups. So, here how to measure that? Whether there are a range of formal and informal employment opportunities available for the vulnerable group. Like we showed that Bhubaneswar example, where there is a center which looks into the employment opportunities of a person with disability. So, if a city has something like that, so that means there is some kind of arrangement being made, whether there are some schemes, whether there are scheme self-employment options are there, and whether the city urban local body, I mean there are the central and the state schemes, whether the urban local bodies are communicating those, whether there are accessible websites as well as accessible one-stop information centers where they can have like that Bhubaneswar for example, where they can have this information on various schemes, employment opportunities available or not. Because because this employment is a very important sector. If you are denying employment, that means you are not letting them the chance to improve their condition. And if you remember the first the circle of deprivation that we saw in our lectures in the week 1, that how that people historically belonging to the within quotes minority community, how they have been traditionally and historically deprived, and how that cycle of deprivation continues. So, this is one education and employment are two very important sectors to break the cycle. Accessible urban bus service, whether the city has an first of all whether the city has an inclusive urban mobility plan, because the city has a master plan, whether the master plan in that master plan where the city has mobility plan, the city has sewerage plans, like that we have separate sectoral plans. So, whether that urban mobility plan has got has given due importance to the component of inclusion, it starts from there. Whether what is the frequency of bus services available at night time and weekends, what are the number of the maybe the accessible buses in the city, what percentage of total bus stops are in the city are accessible, whether the drivers are trained, whether the driver training, I mean this is a very important component, that driver training and the helper training, because all of they have this these training modules. So, and a good example that I saw that in the Mo bus in Bhubaneswar, so there they have this driver training component where they say that where they train the people to be sensitive. Then you have this internet connectivity and digitization. Now, this internet connectivity and digitization is say the information on the city websites related to essential urban services, whether they are accessible or not. AIC has got proper standards that what should be the accessibility, what should be the norms of designing an accessible website. So, whether those are followed or not, how many websites are following that norm. So, that is something which is very important. Whether they are accessible Wi-Fi zones with free connections are available in important public areas, whether the important websites of the ULBs has a mobile app version and it connects to the accessible facilities and services offered by various agencies. Okay. Now, against each of these, if you see that the sources are also given, because this data is because in our country, I mean unfortunately getting data is a big task. So, also that is why this ICF has also given a very exhaustive idea that where you can look for the data, that if a city wants to or if a city engages of a professional to do an accessibility city accessibility audit with the help of these inclusive city same framework, for which parameter or for which feature where they should look for the data, probable sources. Now, accessible safe recreation for all. What are the accessible tourist spaces? Of the tourist spaces which are accessible, how you can reach those? Is there information on that or not? I mean, it can easily be incorporated in a tourism map, because if you just go somewhere, go to a new city, maybe you buy or you procure a brochure kind of a thing, where like 10 places to go, 10 places to visit. So, of these 10 places, which of these 10 places are accessible? It can easily be marked there. That will encourage people also to go. and or rather tell them, okay, these are the places, you can go there, don't go there because those are not accessible. So it can easily be done that. So whether it's there or not. Okay, now comes to the collating the information and doing the scoring. So actually we will be getting different types of response. That was the challenge, you know, like certain will be in terms of percentage. Say what percentage of informal housing have accessible to accessible community water within 30 meters. What percentage of roadside drains are covered so that a wheelchair can pass. Okay. What percentage of public buses are low floor. So that will be in percentage, say 80%, 90%, 30%, 10%, 0%, whatever. So that is percentage. Again, if you have ratios, say example, the number of the special schools per lakh population. So it will be ratio. It may be binary, yes, no, that whether the urban local body website is accessible or not, yes or no, whether you have got a accessible accessibility related problem redressal cell in the urban local body, yes or no. So that will be binary. Now it may be qualitative also, say the safety related issues, intangible issues, whether the public place is felt safe or not. Okay, we talked about a CPS, citizen perception survey, the safety issue is also there. So because say or reliability of the public transport. So these are some intangible factors which also make a city inaccessible. We have discussed this because we have discussed this over the entire course, that other than the physical and the tangible barrier, there are intangible and psychological and social barriers. So this might be have a qualitative rating, very satisfied, not much satisfied, up from very satisfied to not much satisfied. Okay. But if you want to count, if you want to have a cumulative score, you have to add the apples and the oranges. So they are to be converted into one format. Let us see what is that. Here ranges of per percentage, qualitative, binary response, and they are all converted to the numerical score. So that means 90% of the desired value in case of percentage or ratio type response. Why desired value? In the housing I said that 15% of the total housing units are to be accessible. So in a particular case, if there are 12 housing units which are accessible, so that means what is that percentage? 12 out of 15, not 12 out of 100. So 90% of the desired value. So there the desired value is 15. Okay. So that's how you come up with the range for the and where I said that is it is a water supply to formal sector 100%. So there it is 100%. Now next is the qualitative response for level of satisfaction, like very satisfied, quite satisfied. I think that is a standard scale which we use for any sociological research. So this we have simply used that. Binary response, it is 0, 3, 5. Provided in accessible and satisfactory desirable manner, provided but unsatisfactory, not provided, unsatisfactory compliance. So here now you have got all converted into 0 to 5. Okay. Now we have to combine them. Now here this is the range of value for each sector. As we have discussed for this Able India thing, that all might not be applicable. So let us see how is that happening. If all the sectors of all the 6 sectors, all the 23 components, all the 196 indicators, if all are applicable for a city can get a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 980. Okay, number of indicators into 5. Say housing, social and physical infra, 67 into 5, 335. And like that you get 980. But it might so happen that certain things are not there. Like this, I was telling the pilot thing. So when we did a pilot in 4 of our cities, one was we did in one of the hilly cities, where of this urban mobility and public transport, there was not any metro, there was not any public bus. So, that where from 40 it came drastically down to 29. So, that means for that city, for that sit town, the maximum will be 925, because this is not applicable. So, out of 925, whatever the city gets, based on that the final rating will be done. So, if they are getting more than 90% in the total, 5-star. So, above 70 we are saying these are the lighthouse cities, or that is the advanced stage of inclusion, and 50 above, 50 to 70%, 69% partially accessible, requiring acceleratory support. So, that is how we are placing it, and so lighthouse cities and partially accessible. So, starting from, and below 50 we are not considering them at all, pass mark. Okay. Now, the importance of star rating system is that for fulfilling the livability index or fulfilling the mandates of right to person with disability act, the cities and urban areas need to be inclusive. So, this will help them to take very systematic decision. If I might go back to this slide, yes. So, here out of 980, how much a city is getting, that is the total thing. But say a city is getting out of this say 80, livelihood is 80, maybe in 80 the city is getting 10. So, that means there is something seriously wrong about the livelihood sector. That is why the city authority can take informed policy decision based on the realistic assessment or the realistic accessibility audit, sector wise accessibility audit. So, it can be a very pinpointed situations can come up. So, that is a very important component of this. That is why the last point, as it says, checklist will help to identify the the niche areas for improvement. We had also given some strategies for, this is for your knowledge, for implementation financing. We talked about an advisory forum for accessibility and inclusion at district level, an inclusive city cell within the urban local body for day-to-day activity and the technical support. Okay. Now, there is requirement of phasing. Priorities are to be understood, the priority sectors are to be understood. Definitely the priorities can come out from the target group, from the citizen support, perception survey, or from focus group discussion. Priorities can be understood. So, the priority sectors can be identified. Also, there are other things like fund requirement, resource requirement, human resource as well as the technological know-how. All these are important. So, all these will actually help in phasing. There might be some remedy which does not require much of intervention, does not require much of financial, is not a lot of financial burden. So, it can easily be done, even if it is not a very high priority. So, that means something which is low resource requirement, high priority, low resource requirement, but medium priority can be done. Something which is high priority needs to be taken up in the first floor, in the first phase. So, that is definitely essential. But so there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance of resource requirement, the priorities which is being set by the focus group discussion and the citizen perception survey, as well as the current score, or if a particular city is doing very bad in a particular sector. So, I mean that means that immediately gets a priority. So, it has to be a combination of all these. It is a very case to case basis decision. And they need to follow a monitoring checklist, like sector wise the components are there, indicators are there, what is the current score, what is the target final score. So, there can be a phase wise evaluation, that what was the target. So, maybe in the 5 years this will be done. Now, this is going to have to have long term target. So, maybe if you are having a 5-year project, in next 2 years where should you be, in next 3 years and in another 3 years where should you be. So, there is a phase wise what was the target set and what has the achievement been done. And also this should be I mean whenever this audit is done, it is important that you also do the CPS, that is the citizen perception survey, with representatives from all groups. Now, who are these all groups that who are the stakeholders we are going to discuss, so that I mean after the implementation, a partial implementation or some progress have been done, you can go back to them and conduct a second round of CPS with the same set of representatives preferably. Financing, it should be a cross-cutting thing. I mean, it should be a part of the budget of every sector. Every DPR should have some provision for inclusive facilities, has a dedicated budgetary allocation that is expected. And these are our stakeholders, that is representatives from all vulnerable groups, experts like town planners, medical professionals, IT professionals, public health experts, psychologists, urban local bodies, because they can tell what can we do, because they are the suppliers, you know, the demand supply, that the traditional, you know, fight between the suppliers and the people who are demanding. So they can tell I mean tell of the challenges, so they come up with the challenges, so they are also important. NGOs who work for the target group, and the public and the private service providers, state bus corporation, private bus corporation, the paratransit owners, auto taxi service providers, the real estate developers, public as well as private, because they are constructing the final built environment. The hospital managers, the school principals, the bank managers, the managers of the or the caretakers of the historic monument, the other public services, the private nursing homes, multiplexes, shopping malls, everything. So these are our list of stakeholders. So with this, let's hope to have our cities more safe, accessible and inclusive. Thank you.